The first time it happened, Thomas pushed his plate away from him so fast that the soup spilled onto the tablecloth. He stood up from the table. He was breathing like a man who had just seen something that the rest of the world had not. I looked at the plate. I looked at the soup. I looked at the egusi, the same egusi I had been making since my mother taught me at 16. And I saw nothing. Nothing was there. But Thomas was standing against the wall on the other side of the kitchen and he was shaking. Let me tell you about egusi soup first, because if you did not grow up with it, you cannot understand what it means to the woman who makes it. Egusi is not just food. It is the thing my mother made when someone was sick and needed to come back to themselves. It is what was on the table at every celebration, every recovery, every return. To make egusi well is to say, I love you, in the oldest language I know. That is what I put on Thomas's plate every time. Thomas had married into egusi. He knew this. On our third date, I told him, I need you to understand that I am a woman who cooks and who takes it seriously. He laughed and said, I am a man who eats and who takes it equally seriously. And for the first 2 years of our marriage, egusi was his favorite. He would come to the kitchen while I cooked and stand close and say, it smells right today, as if he had a standard, as if the soup had a correct version and he was its authority. The first incident was 14 months into our marriage, a Tuesday evening. I had spent 2 hours on the soup, the egusi toasted just right, the stockfish balanced, the palm oil measured with the eye rather than a spoon, the way Mama had taught me. I called Thomas to the table. He sat down, he looked at the soup, and then something crossed his face. Not disgust, not confusion, something closer to recognition, like he was seeing something familiar that should not have been there. He did not eat it that evening. He said he was not hungry. He said he had eaten late at the office. He said the soup smelled different. Not bad, just different. He apologized 3 times. He was careful with me, the way you are careful with someone you are trying not to hurt. And I accepted every explanation because I had no reason not to. I covered the soup and put it in the fridge and told myself he was tired. Tired men say strange things. It happened again 3 weeks later. This time, he did not push the plate away. He simply stopped eating mid-spoon. He set the spoon down. He sat very still. I asked him what was wrong. He said, there is something in the soup. I said, what do you mean? He said, something moving. I looked at the soup. I looked hard. There was nothing. There was absolutely nothing in that soup except what I had put there. I tasted the soup myself, right there from his bowl with his spoon. It was perfect. It tasted exactly as it should, the way my mother's tasted, the way mine had always tasted. I finished the spoon and looked at Thomas and said, it is fine. There is nothing wrong with it. And Thomas looked at me and said, Olivia, I am not saying it tastes wrong. I am saying something is moving inside it. And he said it so calmly that I was more frightened than if he had shouted. After that second time, I started watching him, not with suspicion, with concern. I watched him eat other foods. He ate rice without incident. He ate fried fish, plantain, pepper soup, yam, all of it fine. He ate without hesitation, without stopping, without looking at his food like it was looking back. It was only the egusi. Every time I made egusi, something happened, and every time I made anything else, nothing did. By the 4th incident, Thomas had stopped trying to eat egusi at all. He would sit at the table when I served it, put a spoon in his bowl, look at it for 3 seconds, and then quietly get up and make himself something else. No argument, no explanation, just a quiet, private withdrawal from the thing that was doing something to him. And I would sit at the table alone and eat my egusi and feel the particular loneliness of someone whose love language has been made inaccessible. I tried everything rational first. I changed the brand of egusi, grinding it fresh from the market instead of buying pre-ground. I changed the palm oil, a new bottle, a different supplier. I changed the stockfish. I even changed the pot. New pot, new ladle, new everything. I remade the soup from the ground up, as if rebuilding a thing that had gone wrong. Thomas sat at the table, put a spoon in his bowl, looked for 3 seconds, and got up. Something was not in the ingredients. Something was in the soup itself. I told Mama Olivia by accident. She called on a Sunday afternoon and asked how I was, and I said fine. And she said, "You do not sound fine." And before I could stop myself, I was telling her about the soup and Thomas and the 4 incidents and the new pot and the identical result. She listened without interrupting. When she finished, she said, "When did he marry you?" I said, 2 years ago. She said, "And when did this start?" I said, 14 months in. She was quiet for the exact length of time it takes to understand something. Mama Olivia came the following weekend. She did not tell me what she was thinking. She came in, greeted Thomas warmly, sat down, ate a full plate of egusi soup, the same soup Thomas had left untouched, and said nothing except that it was good. Then, after Thomas had gone to bed, she sat with me in the kitchen and said, "Olivia, tell me about his family. Tell me about his sister." Sarah, Thomas's older sister. I had met her twice, once at the introduction ceremony and once at a family gathering 3 months into the marriage. She was warm both times. She had touched my face when we met, the way older women sometimes do, cupping it in both hands and saying, "You are beautiful. This will be a good home." I had felt nothing except the slight awkwardness of being held by someone I didn't know well. I told Mama Olivia this. She listened. Then she said, "Did she touch anything in your kitchen?" I thought back. I thought carefully, and I remembered. Sarah had come to the house 3 days before the first incident. She had come with foodstuffs as a gift, a gesture I thought was generous. She had helped me unpack them into the kitchen. She had been in the kitchen maybe 20 minutes. She had touched the Egusi container. I remembered because she had said, "Ah, you buy the good brand." And she had lifted the container and turned it over to read the label and put it back. Mama Olivia listened to everything I had just remembered. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Olivia, that woman did not come to bring you foodstuffs. She came to see your kitchen, and she did not touch the egusi to read the label." I said, "Then what did she do?" Mama Olivia looked at me the way she looks at me when she is about to say something she wishes she did not have to say. She said, "She put something in it. Something that would only activate when the soup was cooked. Something meant for your husband's eyes." I want to stop here and tell you what I felt in that moment. Because it will be easy to tell you I felt rage. And there was rage, eventually. But the first thing I felt was something smaller and stranger than rage. I felt embarrassed. I felt embarrassed that I had been cooking with something contaminated without knowing it. That my hands had been working the soup, my love going into it, and something else had been in there the whole time, working against the thing I was trying to build. We did not wake Thomas that night. Mama Olivia said, "Not yet. We need to handle this correctly." She said, "First, we clear the kitchen. Everything Sarah touched, everything she brought, every container, every ingredient from that visit. Tomorrow." She said, "And then we find the right person. Because what was put in that egusi was not put there by accident, and it cannot be removed by accident either." The next morning, while Thomas was at work, Mama Olivia and I cleared the kitchen. Everything Sarah had touched, everything she had brought. We put it all in black bags and it left the house. I cleaned every surface. I cleaned the shelves. I cleaned the pot Thomas had eaten from the first time. I mopped the kitchen floor. It took 4 hours. When I finished, the kitchen smelled like clean tiles and washing soap and nothing else. and I stood in the middle of it and felt something I had not felt in 14 months. I felt like it was mine again. Pastor Chris came on a Thursday while Thomas was at work. I had told Thomas only that something was wrong that needed to be addressed and that I needed him to trust me. He said, "Olivia, I have been watching something crawl in your egusi soup for 14 months. I will trust you on anything you need." That was the moment I understood the full weight of what had been done to him. He had been seeing this alone for 14 months and saying nothing because he did not want to frighten me. Pastor Chris arrived at 10 a.m. He walked through the kitchen first. He stood at the stove for a long time. He opened the new egusi container, the fresh one I had bought after clearing the kitchen, and looked at it without touching it. He went to the dining table. He sat in Thomas's chair. He sat there for a full minute with his eyes closed. Then he opened them and said, "The kitchen is clean, but the table is not, the chair is not." The contamination moved. Sarah had been back. I had not known. Thomas had told me, when I asked him that evening, that Sarah had stopped by the house one afternoon 6 weeks after her first visit, while I was at work, and had sat at the dining table and had tea with him, and had left. He had not mentioned it because there had been nothing to mention. She was his sister. She had sat in that chair, she had been at that table, and she had left something behind that she had not brought with her. What Pastor Chris did over the following 2 days I will describe only in outline. He returned with 2 other people. The table was addressed, the chair was addressed. He prayed through the kitchen again, the dining area, the full house. Thomas was present for all of it. And I want to tell you about Thomas during those 2 days, because he was not afraid, he was angry. Quietly, completely, specifically angry. The anger of a man who has just understood that something was using his eyes against his marriage. On the 3rd evening, after Pastor Chris finished, I cooked egusi soup. New everything. New egusi, new palm oil, new pot, new table. Thomas's chair replaced. I set the table. I called Thomas. He came and sat down. He looked at the soup. He picked up his spoon. He put it in the bowl. He lifted it. He looked at it for a long moment, and then he ate it. He ate the whole bowl. He said nothing until he was finished, and then he looked up at me and said, "It is right. It tastes right." Thomas and I talked for a long time that night about Sarah, about what she wanted and what she was willing to do to get it, about the marriage she perhaps believed she was protecting her brother from. We did not call her that night. We did not call her the next day. We have not spoken to Sarah since. That is not something I say with satisfaction. It is something I say with the plain honesty of a woman who knows that some doors, once you understand what came through them, you simply do not reopen.
My marriage is different now. Not smaller, larger. Because Thomas and I know something about each other that only difficulty teaches. We know that when one of us says something is wrong, the other one listens. We know that silence to protect someone is not always protection. And we know, this is the thing I return to most, that what someone puts into the space between 2 people can only work as long as neither person is paying attention. We are paying attention now. We have not stopped. The lessons. And I want you to receive these not as things that happen to me, but as things that belong to anyone who cooks, who loves, who opens their home to people they're still learning. First, know who has access to your kitchen, not with paranoia, with awareness. The kitchen is not just where food is made, it is where love is made. And love, in any form, deserves to be protected from hands that do not mean it well. Second, when the person you love reports something strange, do not make them defend their strangeness before you investigate it. Thomas saw something in my soup for 14 months. 14 months of sitting at our table and seeing something I could not see. He said nothing because he did not want to frighten me. I said nothing because I did not want to doubt him. We were both trying to protect each other, and we were both alone in it. Speak earlier. investigate together. Do not protect each other into isolation. Third, gifts from complicated relationships deserve a second look. Not every gift is what it appears to be. Not every gesture of warmth is warmth. When someone who has reason to want something from your life brings something into your home, receive it with open hands and open eyes. The open hands are hospitality. The open eyes are wisdom. You need both. Fourth, the contamination of a love language is a specific kind of violence. Someone who understood that cooking was how I loved deliberately chose cooking as the site of the attack. They did not choose randomly. They chose precisely. That precision tells you something about the person. It tells you that they studied you. It tells you that your love was visible enough to be used against you. That is not a shame to carry. It is a clarity to hold. Fifth, clean the whole house, not just the point of entry. When something contaminates a space, it moves. It finds the places most used by the people it is targeting. The kitchen was cleared, but the chair remained. Always ask, where else has this person been? What else did they touch? What other surfaces carry what they brought? The clearing must be complete, or it is not a clearing. It is just a relocation. And sixth, cook your food again. I say this for every woman, every person who has had something that they made with love turned into a site of harm. Cook it again. With new hands, new ingredients, a clean pot, a cleared table. Make the thing that was used against you and put your love back into it. Because the love was always yours. What was added to it was never yours. Remove what was added. Keep what was always there. Cook it again.